Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the latest episode of the La Piedra podcast with me, Sean Woolley. I'm the managing director of Cloud9 Spain, a real estate company based on the southern coast of Spain. And with me, my partner in crime, shouldn't be saying that, Mark Stucklin from Spanish Property Insight. He's the guy, the go-to guy for data and analysis of the Spanish market. And Mark is often featured in some of the leading media outlets, including things like the Sunday Times. So he is the go-to guy for this kind of thing. And just to remind you, the reason we started this podcast was to try and give a balanced view of where the market is, where it's been, and maybe where it's heading, based on two fronts, really. Mark's expertise with the data and the analysis, and my experience of what's happening on the ground with real live people and situations. So welcome again, Mark. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Nice dull day up here in Barcelona.
Oh, it's nice and sunny down here. We had a little bit of rain for a week or so, which I hate it when people say, "Oh, we need the rain."
Yeah.
I know we do, but it's still never nice. But it's back to a bit of normality now. So, what are we going to be discussing today then?
Well, I thought we'd talk about some data that was published last month, which I wrote about last month, which came from a property portal called Idealista. It's the biggest, I think, in Spain. Yep. And they published data on the listing times that we see in the how long listings stay in their database.
Yep.
And so listings could be up for 1 week, or up for a month, or 3 months, or a year, or more than a year. And they kind of said that this was the same as sales times, which is not true. There's lots of reasons why listings can go up and down, and there's lots of duplicate, listings can go, I don't know, if an estate agent just gets a new listing, puts it online, but it was already listed with another agent, sold the next day, it goes down straight away. But that doesn't mean to say that it took a day to sell. It might have been on the market for 6 months. It's not a very accurate guide, but it's the best we have, because there is no other data on how long properties take to sell, other than your own individual, for in different agencies who collect that data, they might know. So anyway, that's what there is. And so they provided this data broken down by province and provincial capital, and with a Spain average, based on listings in their own database in December. And that showed, for example, that for a Spain average, 20% of listings were only up for 1 week. And so if you infer from that that's how long it takes. So 20% of properties sold in a week of being advertised, 35% in a month, 56% in 3 months, and 85% in a year. So that was an average for Spain. And there's something to benchmark yourself against if you want to sell a property. Let me just specify, we're talking about resales here. We're not talking about new developments. That's a whole, it's a different ball game. So if you have a property to sell in Spain and you want to know, and people who do consult, they want to know how long it's going to take to sell, because it's something that's important to them. And trying to sell a property it's quite a big job. It's something you want to get, once you've made the decision, you want to get it done as quickly as possible, basically, at the best price. That's the sort of best price as quickly as possible. That's what
absolutely,
you want to achieve. Absolutely. So just before I start picking your brains on this, let me just tell you what the same data showed for the Malaga province. So that would be Costa del Sol. So Malaga province, once again, 20% of listings were disappeared in a week. So let's say 20% of properties sold in a week, and 36% sold in a month, 58% sold in 3 months, and 89% sold in a year.
It's very similar,
quite similar. And then there's a big spread between, I don't know, the best is Granada for the whole of Spain. It goes from Granada province, which is also in Andalusia, your neighbours down there on the next coast along. And there we see, let me just organize this data by year. So in Granada capital, properties, 97% of properties are sold within a year. which is the highest in Spain, and 34% sold in a week. And at the other end of the scale was Teruel province, with only 50% of property, just over 50% of properties sold in a year.
Right.
So there's a big spread.
Yeah. And I guess within those provincial figures, there's going to be, like we've discussed before, there's going to be markets within markets within markets, which is so hard to get the data for. But those figures are really interesting. And I think, you've just said earlier that it's difficult to sell a property particularly to a foreign client base. It's not, we get a lot of clients from England, for instance, questioning commission levels here. And the simple fact is that we have to go to a global audience. We can't, just satisfy ourselves with sticking a thing in the window and hoping for the best and putting it on Rightmove like you do in the UK, where that people are looking for that specific street or that specific village. It's a different ballgame here, because clients very often are not specific to an area or a street or anything like that. They're quite happy to look around, and then you've got so many markets out there. So that's why it's expensive, and it's time consuming, and it's confusing, and it's fragmented, and it's a very, very different market to a home residential market, I would say. And those figures are interesting. We always take on listings that we feel we can sell. We don't list for the sake of vanity, like a lot of agents do. They just want hundreds of things on their books. I don't need the hassle of 100, 200 vendors phoning me up every day asking why I haven't sold their property. So we tend to, when we get a vendor coming to us and saying, "Can you come and have a look at my property and see what you can do with it?" We go with a very open mind, but we go with our facts and figures as well of what's on our shared system, what we think, we know that things have sold for, and then we'll give them a guide price on what we believe they can achieve based on the historical figures, but also based on the look and feel of the apartment, which is incredibly important. The presentation, the location, the orientation, the views, all those little sort of micro details that you need to consider. And when we give a valuation, normally the client is content with that. It normally accords with what they're thinking, but occasionally, particularly in a market that's got a little bit heated over the last few years, a little bit excitable, you can get vendors who say, "Well, no, I want more. I want more than that." And I know that there are some agents out there who'll go, "Great, fantastic, yeah, we'll list it at that," and they get it on the books, beat all the other agents to it, and then over time, of course, the price comes down. But at least that agent has the listing. We do it in a different way because we haven't got time or the energy to play games like that. So we just say to a client, "Look, this is worth, I don't know, 500,000 euros." And if the client comes back and says, "Well, I think it's worth 700,000 euros," we'll say, "Well, in that case, it's not for us because we don't think it's worth that." And we lose listings that way, but we would rather be honest and open, transparent about how we do it. As I say, there are a lot of agents who go in there and just will tell the client, the vendor, what they want to hear. "Yeah, of course, your property is worth 700,000. In fact, I think it's worth 800,000. Let's put it on at that." And they will do that just to get control of the listing. And then over time, they will let the client down gently by saying, "Oh, sorry, I think we were a little bit hopeful on the price. Let's bring it down to 7. Then it goes to 6. Then it goes to 5." And by that time, everyone's kind of bored of seeing this property. And before you know it, it's gone down to 4. So it can be false economy sometimes, not always, but it can be false economy. But it's very interesting with the time scales, because we discuss it in-house all the time, via my sales team. How can we move our listings? How can we, what else can we do to try and shift them? And it comes down to, supply and demand. Basically, we've got listings in developments that have a paucity of listings. So maybe one other competitor in a beachside development. And we know that there's interest in that development, and we know that we're going to sell it. So we had one a few weeks ago in Alcazaba Beach in Estepona, very, very nice development, ticks all the boxes basically. And we got a listing, which we thought was a fair price, and we sold it within a week. Because there's always people looking for that development, and there was a lack of competition within that development. We had another one, a penthouse at 1.5 million. Somebody bought it via a virtual viewing. That had been on for less than a week, but somebody was looking specifically for a penthouse in that building. And we put it out to all the agents, and there was one agent who had that client looking for that exact property. Basically, we had the property and we did a very quick deal over the telephone. So those deals do exist, but I think if you're going to sell that quickly, you have to be in what I call a prolific development or a prolific area where there's always constant demand, and you need to time it right. You don't want to be going to market when you've got 20 other competitors. Basically, all your neighbors are for sale as well, because you lose control of the price. The best time to go to market, of course, when you want to sell, is when there's a lack of stock and a high demand. And if you time it right, you should be able to sell very quickly. So that's the primary example of why things go quickly or why things stick around. It might not be a prolific area, and you might have to wait for that ideal buyer, and you might have to adjust your price, and you might have somebody put their property on the market at a more competitive price and it's a better property, and then you kind of have to wait for the natural order of things to take place. So that one has to go first, and then you've got control of the market. And again, we're very honest with vendors. If we know there's a better priced, better property around the corner, we'll say that's your competition. And very often the competition is a new development. We'll go in and say, look, your competition is this development around the corner. It's shiny, it's new, they've got a show home. You can walk in and smell the coffee, and there's jazz playing, and it's amazing. And here's your place. It's 20 years old. It's grotty. The bathrooms and kitchens need doing. How are we going to compete? And you either compete on lowering the price, or you have to do some work. And a lot of people, we find, a lot of second homeowners don't want to do that work. They don't want to invest 10,000 euros to get 50,000 back. And very often it's a case of that. Very often, to compete with someone who's made that effort or a new development, you have to spend a little bit of money, particularly if your property is over 10 years old, for instance, because there will be things that are out of date, and you get one chance to impress. And we always say to people, like there's a villa around the corner and it's like a brown color. And I said to the owner, because he can't sell it, and I said, have you ever thought about painting it? I did it in a nice way. Have you ever just not paint it? I said, have you ever thought about painting it like a cream or a stone color? No, I like the brown. I said, well, I'm telling you now, if you repainted that house and remarketed it, you could probably get 100,000 euros more than what you're asking for. And he can't see it. He just can't see it. He likes the brown, and that's fair. That's fair enough. But we're the experts. We've been around for 20 years. We kind of know what works, or we think we do. I hope we do. But if people don't take our advice, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah. No, I get the point about segments. It's very easy to talk about. Like, I pull out some data, and that data is very kind of the Spain average, but it all really comes down to segments. And like you say, if there's much competition in that segment, if there's much liquidity in that segment, I mean, you can see it straight away in the data that the capitals have better sales times and quicker sales time than provinces, because capitals tend to be more liquid markets. There's more buyers and sellers in the market, there's more turnover and things move quicker. But so it really does depend on. And then you get down to the specifics of a property. What might have some absolutely knockout, killer characteristics, a fantastic price, well staged, all sorts of things. But generally speaking, to give listeners an idea, on the cost del sol, and let's say, I don't know whether it makes much of a difference between apartments and villas and the types of property, but what's the sort of, if you've got your asking price, more or less in the market, in the right bracket, what's the average time that it takes from on the market to, let's say, to signing a reservation, some sort of commitment from a buyer, maybe not to completion before notary, but just to I've got a deposit on it, I've got a reservation. What's the average time?
I would say between 3 and 6 months is the average. And clients always ask us this question, and of course we never commit because you can't. And we have listings that stick around for no reason, stuff that we love, and we push it and we market it, and the photos are done, the videos are done, and they just don't get a bite. And I always say to people, look, if we're getting viewings, then the price is right. If we're not getting viewings and we're doing all that effort and marketing, if we're not getting viewings from that, then there's something off with the price. If we're getting viewings but no offers, then there's something wrong with the property. There's something we need to look at, and that's the basic rule. But I always say to to people in this fragmented market where 70% of transactions are done with more than one agent involved. So someone will have the buyer, someone will have the property. Make sure that your property is opened up to the masses so that people can see your property, not just on our website, but also on the shared agent websites that we all have access to, so that other agents, that agent down the road who might have the client for that property, make sure that they're seeing it as well. So it's very important who you instruct and how they are going to market your property, whether they're going to open it up to those people or not. But yeah, as I say, we get stuff that sticks around, we get stuff that sells like that, and we just didn't expect it. So there's no hard and fast rule, but I would say on average between 3 and 6 months. But
so if it's taking longer than 6 months, and there's nothing obviously undermining the sale, like some legalities, or so, then that would suggest that there's something wrong in the mix, that they've got either the presentation's very wrong or the asking prices. So if in 6 months you haven't got a property sold, and according to the data that we were discussing earlier, almost 60% of properties of listings are down within 3 months. And so I guess where I want to go with that is, okay, let's talk about the asking price specifically, because I've always understood that it's very important to get your go-to-market asking price right, because if you if you go too high, then you're going to end up selling. It's going to take you longer to sell, and you could well end up selling for less than you could have got if you'd gone to market with the correct price. Yeah. So it's actually a really important decision to make, the go-to-market asking price if you're a vendor. And I would argue that it's better to be depends on the market cycle as well. Are you in a like a buyer's or a seller's market? But it's better to be, if you're not trying to waste time and you want to sell and you want to get out and move on with your life and get the capital for other projects or whatever your personal reasons, you're better erring on the side of lower than higher, because that's going to help you to move on. But as I've understand it from multiple conversations with agents, vendors sometimes, for many different reasons, they're just kind of greedy or have too high expectations, and that ends up being completely counterproductive, and they would have been better off sold better, quicker, for a better price if they'd gone with a more aggressive price to the market.
Absolutely. And we've got vendors who have received offers from buying clients and turned them down, and of course 6 months later they wish they'd taken them, and there's always that. Any market is governed by greed and fear, depending on which side of the coin you are. And it's no different in this market. We all want as much as we can when we're selling, and we all want as little as we can to spend when we're buying. And that's never going to change. What we normally do with clients is we will say, look, we think this property is worth 500,000, but the thing about properties, you can always come down in price, but you can never really go up, because then when you go up, people are going to think, hang on, why are you putting your price up? People do that. If they think they can get more, they will do, but agents tend to look at it and go, hang on, something fishy going on. So we always say, look, we can come down. So if we think the market price is 500,000, we will normally allow a little bit of wriggle room in there for negotiations. We might advise to market it at 550, but so
10% negotiation room, 5-10%.
I think so, because sometimes we do actually say to a client, look, particularly if it brings it under a price threshold. So if, for instance, we say, look, we think it's worth 500,000, why don't we put it on at 495, no offers? And by doing that, it means that people who are searching up to 500,000 are going to see your property. Whereas if it was at 550, they wouldn't. So you're going to appeal to more buyers, and then it's up to the agent to educate those buyers and those collaborating agents that 495, that is it. There is no offer. There is no wriggle room at all. And some people like that, and sometimes we're very successful with that strategy because the headline price is low and it's good. Sometimes you just you get buyers and you'll tell them there's no room, and they'll still offer 10% less. So.
Yeah. So here's a question. The way it works, the kind of mechanics of it, I assume, is that when people are in the market, they've decided they want to buy something. Let's say we go with this example of like an apartment at the Costa Sol for 500,000. They start looking, and they start at the portals and doing their searches, and quite quickly they get an idea of what's on the market at what price. And people are not stupid, and it's very easy nowadays to see to get this visibility into what not in sales prices, but actually asking prices and what's on the market. So presumably people, they start and they make contact agents, make some inquiries, but they'll spend a few weeks or months actually looking and watching what's on the market. And so they see when something new comes on the market, and they'll have an opinion on the price based on how it compares to others, other comparable properties. And presumably, if something comes onto the market that's just clearly overpriced or out of the market on price wise, then people just, you may get some inquiries, but there's no interest. There's no real interest because it's too high. The price is too high, and then they just watch. It just sits there and it doesn't change, and then, until it starts dropping, and then it's kind of like bad. It's like a fish gone bad. It smells. People get put off by something that's, and this is something I've seen and talking to agents. I've seen that it sort of just kind of gives it's a sort of something hanging over. It's like a cloud hangs over a property, and it just stays there and slowly comes down and down, and people just ignore it until they get, and it has to go to a price below because their prejudices against it at the beginning. And it's not like people, oh, well, someone's going to come new tomorrow and they'll see it for the first time. There is a bit of that, but these things, they just hang around on the market, getting a bad reputation for a long time.
They do. And us as agents, we get a bit apathetic when we see the same property being sent to us week after week, and 10 grand off and 10 grand off. You think, and what you think as an agent, if it's priced too high, you think that vendor is going to be tough to deal with.
Yes.
He set his sights at 700,000. All of a sudden it's coming down at he's going to be a tough cookie, and it puts you off going to show it and trying to negotiate on it.
Absolutely.
So
that makes perfect sense. Someone who's got unrealistic expectations, they're just going to, that vendor is going to be hard work, and that hard work is a cost.
Yeah, and very often we have the same reaction when a price goes up. So we'll see, we have access to all that information, and we can see when we get a red arrow saying it's gone up. If someone's done that, it means it might be an amazing property, but naturally we become cautious, and we say, why is that guy putting his price up by 50,000? Why? What is motivating him to do that? Greed. Simple greed.
It must be quite unusual, though, that people putting up the price. It's more likely, I guess, that especially in Spain, where these asking sales price comparables are harder to come by, and therefore the market is less tethered to real prices. Like it's not as anchored as other markets where there's much more transparency into actual sales prices, and people can get real comparables.
Yeah, Mark, you would be surprised. You'd be surprised. There's I mean, in certain areas, there's always little price reductions because people have become overexcited and the market just needs to correct. We're not talking much, but no, there are people out there who as soon as they get a couple of viewings, they think, oh, well, my price is too low. I'm getting interest, so they put the price up. And we would never advise that. If we had a client who wanted to do that, we would say, look, come on, you took our advice, we priced it correctly. And then someone says, well, but my neighbor, 15 minutes down the road, he sold his apartment and mine's better than that. So let's put that becomes personal.
Yeah.
It really does. Great. I think that's covered us for this session.
Yes.
We will reconvene next month, no doubt, to chew the fat over some other issues that have emerged in the meantime. But thank you as always, Mark.
Likewise, Sean, it was always a pleasure and an education talking to you.
And likewise, I will speak to you very soon, sir.